Fellow students, and welcome to this video lesson on fats, a concentrated energy source. We're going to dive into the types of fats and how it affects your body. Before we go any further, we have to understand that the overall category of fats, actually the term is coined lipids, right? And lipids is the broader term used to describe fat, oils, lecithin, cholesterol, and just other complex compounds that would be under the fat category. Now, there are three main classifications of lipids that we tend to talk most about, and these are triglycerides, phospholipids, and sterols. So let's look at what each type of fat really is. Okay, triglycerides. These are found in our food and often referred to as our blood fat. When you go to the doctor and you have your blood tested, your triglycerides, the fat in your blood, will be the number that they give you. Phospholipids. These are fats with a phosphorus-containing compound, and these help form cell membranes. They're a part of every cell, and they create a cell bilayer, which I'll talk about later in this video lesson. And then the last type of fat is sterols. These are complex lipid structures, and they have various use in the human body. Examples would be cholesterol, hormones, like sex hormones, testosterone, estrogen, and vitamin D. So here are some examples, pictures found online that give you an idea of what the chemical structure of each type of fat is. And you can see triglyceride, and we'll dive into it here in a little bit more. But it's got a glycerol unit and then 3 fatty acids attached to it. And then the type of triglyceride will be defined by the fatty acids. Then you have phospholipid, which you can see the phosphate group at the top attached to the glycerol, and then the fatty acids as well. And then the complex structure of a steroid, for example, or a sterol, is there as well. It's got different hydrocarbon rings as opposed to acid chains. All right, so what are triglycerides? All right, this is the major type of fat in the food and in the body. All right, so this will cause your blood fat levels to go up or down. Okay. Triglyceride structures include 3 fatty acids attached to the glycerol compound, which you'll see down below. You'll have the glycerol unit, then 3 fatty acids. All right, together they create the triglyceride. And you got to see on the previous slide where it had the glycerol unit and then 3 fatty acid chains on top of it. Okay. Now, what's a fatty acid? These are organic compounds made up of carbon atom chains that have hydrogen atoms attached. And there are 3 types of fatty acids. And this is often what we see on food labels or we hear in nutrition. All right? We have saturated fatty acids, monounsaturated fatty acids, and polyunsaturated fatty acids. Now, what's saturated fat? Well, a saturated fat, other than people telling you it's horrible for you, it can be, but we'll dive into that a little bit later. Saturated fatty acid has no double bonds between carbon atoms in each molecule. Now, understanding this, the molecular structure of food, you need to understand a little bit of chemistry. So, bonds are what where atoms connect to each other and electrons are either shared or transferred. Well, in these molecules, you'll see bonds and double bonds. Now on here you'll see with a saturated fatty acid, you'll see one line from the carbon to the hydrogen or to another carbon. That indicates that there is one bond between those particular atoms. And then you see the C and the O up over all the way to the left. There's 2 lines that would indicate a double bond. So each bond indicates how many they can share. Now carbon, the reason it creates so many chains is it's only got 4 electrons, all right, in its atom, so it can bond with almost anything, and that's why you'll see such an amount of connections. Well, why is it saturated? Well, the triglyceride has the most hydrogen atoms it could have and is saturated or filled with them. So you can see there's no double bonds between carbons and hydrogens, which means the full amount of hydrogens would be on that saturated fat. Now, what does that do? Well, believe it or not, this makes it solid at room temperature. right? And saturated fat is only found, all right, in animal fats typically, but butter, shortening, but you can see them in coconut oils or palm oils. And then oftentimes where you find most saturated fat is hydrogenated, which we'll talk about later, and man-made or trans fat used in fast and processed foods. Okay, so animal fats will have saturated fat, any butter, any shortening, any solid at room temperature oils. All right, I mentioned hydrogenation and trans fat. Hydrogenation is the process of breaking those double bonds in oils, which you'll see in a moment with the mono and poly, and adding hydrogen in there. And it goes from having less double bonds and less hydrogens to having the full boat. And what that does is it increases the hydrogen in there, which makes it solid, and the process is done to increase the shelf life or how long a food product can last for consumption. Not necessarily the best thing. Okay? It didn't happen naturally. Okay, so trans fatty acids are hydrogenated fats used for commercial use. An example is vegetable shortening. Crisco is an example. And the addition of the hydrogen to the oils to make it solid at room temperature. These aren't the best to use. All right, again, I've always subscribed. Limit man-made products, and hydrogenation is a man-made product such as shortening. Stick to butter or natural oils. All right, monounsaturated fat. All right, this is considered good fat. All right, an unsaturated fatty acid has at least one double bond between carbon atoms in each molecule. So imagine that saturated fat chain. Now we have a double bond between a carbon, and there's one or two less hydrogens, in the chain. Now what does that do? All right, that makes these fats not solid, and they'll have an oily consistency and will often be liquid at room temperature. Okay, examples include olive oil, avocados, the oily texture on them, all right, nuts, and peanut oils. These are what would be considered good fat. And please note the examples I gave you, these occur naturally in the world, grown. Now, polyunsaturated fat, what's that? Well, these have two or more double bonds between carbon atoms and even less hydrogen, so it's even smoother at room temperature. All right, and remember, these have the least amount of hydrogen atoms in the molecule. All right, these are liquid at room temperature. And then examples would include vegetable and seed oils, such as sunflower, safflower, corn oil, soy oil, and some nuts and seeds. All right, polyunsaturated fats are also found in seafood, such as salmon. Many of the examples, other than the ones that I have on the screen, such as the oils that you can use to cook with, are not found naturally and actually are processed. So we'll talk about that a little bit later when I give you some suggestions about. So oftentimes they'll say, have this vegetable oil or use this seed oil instead of butter, a saturated fat. But in reality, you're actually consuming a man-made product. So we have to be careful about how much we take into that because it can cause inflammation on our body. Phospholipids. This is the second type of fat. All right. So everything I talked about previously was the first type of fat, triglycerides. Phospholipids, second type. These are very important. All right. They have a phosphorus-containing compound in the chemical structure. All right. Right at the top. These lipids help form cell bilayers, all right, which help nutrient and water absorption in cells. So just think of the cell membrane that you learned in basic biology, and surrounding that cell membrane, or making up that cell membrane, is the phospholipid cell bilayers. And the hydrophilic head and the phosphate group will allow or deny nutrients and water into those particular cells. Now, lecithin is a compound phospholipid and is made by the human body, so we don't need to get it from food if we don't need to. Okay, again, our bodies make cells naturally, so if we have what we need, we're okay. It's not essential to consume, but it is found as an ingredient in some foods, and it's a little controversial, but it is being added to foods now, but it doesn't need to be, because if you eat properly and eat whole and natural foods, your body will create the phospholipids and the lecithin necessary to build up your cells. Sterols, not to be confused with steroids. All right, sterols. These are waxy substances. All right, they're complex lipid structures, and they have various uses in the human body. Examples include cholesterol, hormones such as testosterone and estrogen, and vitamin D. Vitamin D is great for skin health, sunlight absorption, and we can create vitamin D through getting sunlight naturally. We don't necessarily need to take it, even though dairy products will be fortified or have vitamin D added to it. Cholesterol is made naturally in the human body, so we do not need to take that in, but having it from animal products is never going to be a bad thing. And then hormones, sterols, we produce hormones naturally in our body, but we use fat that we eat, triglycerides, and that will help form our hormones. This is why eating properly is so important. All right, let's talk about cholesterol, for example. Cholesterol is a white, waxy lipid, and it's used to create structures for all cell membranes. Okay? And cholesterol is also used to form sex hormones in the body. Now, I mentioned testosterone and estrogen, and most think male and female, but those sex hormones do a lot more for cellular growth and body function than we tend to think about. So having cholesterol in our body, which we do make, will help promote our growth over a long period of time. Now, interesting to note, cholesterol, because we hear it's bad all the time, you can't have too much cholesterol, right? It's only found in animal fat. There is no cholesterol found in plant-based products. You'll never find it in plant-based products. There just is none, okay? Cholesterol is produced by the human body, and it's not needed from food products. So if you do take it in, all right, let's take it in within a reasonable amount, and let's kind of watch it, but it is not going to be detrimental to your health, especially if you eat a whole natural food diet. All right, so I've talked about the three types of fats, but what are the purpose? What's the purpose of it? Well, why do we need them? Well, fats are a concentrated energy source. I think it's the most functional energy source and the body's preferred. It gives you 9 calories per gram. Our body wouldn't work so hard to try to keep fat on our body in our adipose tissue, all right, and store it and create weight gain for us if it wasn't such a great energy source. Okay. Now, essential fatty acids, what are these? These are fats that we get from foods. We do not make these, and they're needed for healthy skin and major organs. An example is linoleic acid. Fat deficiency, especially in the United States, is rare. Okay, it's rare. We actually probably take in too much fat, and we don't burn enough off. Okay. Now, I mentioned adipose tissue. This is where we store excess fat. All right, and it's a tissue found underneath our skin, and this layer provides insulation and warmth for the human body. Now, what else does it do? Well, fat also provides a cushion and protects our organs, our heart, our lungs, our liver. Okay? And there is the likelihood that if we have too much fat, it can cause a fatty liver or a fatty pancreas, or too much fat can build up on our organs and our heart and cause health problems. Now, fat is a part of every cell, phospholipid cell bilayer, and used to make some hormones and vitamins. So please note that it is part of everything, and that we do need fat. We can't just not eat it. And fat makes food moist, tender, and flavorful. Our brain recognizes fat intake, and it wants it because it knows it's a good energy source and that it will sustain life. And then lastly, believe it or not, you need fat to take in vitamins. We hear vitamins are so important. All right, vitamin A, B, C, D, E, A, K, right? All the B12s. Okay. Well, there's ones that are fat soluble, which means they need fat to absorb into our body, and those are vitamins A, D, E, and K. Now let's talk about digestion and absorption of fats. Most fats are digested from triglycerides found in the foods. Okay? So that's what our stomach will digest the most, and that's where we get our energy from. Fats will float to the top of the stomach, as you can see, and that will give a feeling of fullness. So if you've ever had a fatty or oily meal, fast food comes to mind first. You might feel sick to your stomach, and it's usually because your stomach is full. All that fatty food has floated to the top, and it's made your stomach uncomfortable. It didn't sink to the bottom. Now, how do you break it down? Well, bile from the gallbladder will help break down fats in the small intestines. So little droplets get released and will attack the triglycerides. The pancreas will then release enzymes, lipase, to break fat into from the triglycerides into what you would call monoglycerides, or single units. Okay. Well, what happens after that? Well, once it's broken down, it's got to be absorbed so your cells can use it. Okay. Blood is made up mostly of water, which does not mix well with fats. Right. So the more oily or fatty your blood is, the thicker it will feel, and the harder it will be for it to move throughout your body. Right? This is what causes coronary problems or heart problems. Fats, or monoglycerides, are absorbed throughout the intestines through the lymphatic system, or your glands, which also control your hormones. And then fats will attach themselves to proteins for transport into the bloodstream. Now, what are those proteins called? Right? Well, for transport throughout the body, so as soon as they go in the stomach and then in the intestines, all right, and they start moving throughout your blood and through your circulatory system, they'll attach to something called lipoproteins. And these are a combination of fats and proteins that help transport, all right, the fat that you eat in the human body for use. Now, you have chylomicrons, are protein-coated triglycerides that carry absorbed dietary fat, okay, what you ate, to body cells so that you can use it. So chylomicrons will bring everything that you need to your cells so it has the energy to function. Then we get to the types of LDLs that we see in our blood lipid profiles. These are your blood tests, when you get blood drawn at the doctor. And LDLs are low-density lipoproteins. These carry cholesterol to body tissues, okay? And when it does that, the tissues, it will build up, and that's where we start our storage, so it stays in the body. We want our LDL numbers to be low, so low density means we want that low. Now, very low density lipoproteins, VLDLs, these carry triglycerides and cholesterol throughout the bloodstream to body cells. These numbers need to be the lowest. All right, so they'll continue to carry throughout your blood to cells, and if the cell doesn't need it, it will continue transporting it. And if it doesn't get removed, your triglyceride levels or your blood fat will be higher. Then you have HDLs, high-density lipoproteins. These carry cholesterol to the liver. And once at the liver, it is discarded as waste. We want our HDL numbers to be higher. Okay? We still don't want too much fat, but we want our HDLs to be higher than the LDLs and the VLDLs. Now, what are the dietary suggestions for fat? Well, the USDA will suggest lower your total fat intake to 30 calories, 30% of your calories. This would equal about 630 calories or 70 grams of fat per day for most people based on a 2,000 calorie diet. You want to limit your visible fats such as butter, fats on the meats, salad oils, poultry skin, and just fried food in general. You also want to limit the invisible fats such as fats and oils that are in muffins and baked goods, sauces, and snack foods. These tend to be our biggest issues, especially in the United States. Limit cholesterol to maximum 300 milligrams a day. Cholesterol is commonly found in just egg yolks, liver, animal fats, lard, milk fat, and butter fat. And then eat less saturated fat and trans fat, which are commonly found in animal fats, snack foods, bakery products, coconut, and palm oils. Okay, so these are suggestions from the USDA. Again, they're not horrible, but they don't tell the whole story on what you should have. Okay, so what's some advice? Well, here's some more suggestions. Fats are necessary for human body to function. Okay, you want to consume omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids. These are found in fish or seafood. These would be the healthy ones, the polyunsaturated fats. Eat natural fats from milk, dairy products, meats, nuts, seeds, and avocados. Again, natural foods. Okay. Added fats in the man-made products, man-made, that's the biggest one, fast food, breads, desserts, they pose the major threat to heart health. Not the animal products, not the steak, not the chicken. It's the added oils on top of the saturated fat. It's the added sugar on top of the saturated fat, right, that cause issues. And then limit the consumption of seed and vegetable oils, which are, again, man-made, right? There are articles and there is research about how seed oils and vegetable oils, because they're man-made, actually cause inflammation in the human body and in our stomachs, in our digestive system. Inflammation is our greatest problem in most health issues, from obesity to any heart-related problems, diabetes, and cancer. Cell inflammation is not healthy. We want it to be natural. So consuming unnatural food products can cause greater inflammation. And that completes our video lesson on fats. I hope you enjoyed the lesson. Big takeaway is fat is not the enemy. All right, our eating habits and our discipline regarding our eating habits is the enemy. All right, I ask you to, what you should do is look at fat as a nutrient. It is important, but just like anything else, eating too much of something can be bad for you. Consuming what's good, the good fat, will help glow your skin, your hair, and promote growth and development in a healthy body. Okay? If it is a whole or natural food and it comes from plant products naturally, and it comes from animal products grown naturally or raised naturally, the fat will not be bad for you. All right. We want to limit our seed oils and anything that is man-made. But if we are going to take that in, again, let's watch the consumption that we have. All right. Hope you learned something. I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.